before we get into tonight's game with the Minnesota Wild and the Vancouver Canucks, we need to tell you that today's episode is a presentation of the Vancouver General Hospital Millionaire Lottery. You've got until midnight, Friday, December 8th, to get in on the VGH Millionaire Lottery Christmas bonus draw, which includes a $40,000 vacation package from Travel Best Bets, or a 2023 Hyundai Elantra Luxury Hybrid, or $33,000 cash. With your VGH Millionaire Lottery tickets, you get in to win of 10 grand prize options, including home packages in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, the Okanagan, Vancouver Island, or you can take $2.7 million in tax-free cash. Don't forget to get your 50-50 plus tickets, where you can win half of BC's biggest jackpot. It can grow to 2.4 million, so don't miss out. We all need VGH, and VGH needs you. Every ticket purchase supports VGH and the UBC Hospital Foundation. With your Millionaire Lottery tickets, you are supporting more than just hospital care. You are supporting you and your loved ones who need it most. Order your tickets toll-free at 1-888-445-5825 in person at London Drugs, or online at millionairelottery.com. 19 plus play. Know your limit. Play within it.
Tyler Myers, by the way, must have won the NHL free agency millionaire lottery.
I was gonna say, do you need like an inhaler after that? Because that was quite the ad read there, Quad.
It's a long ad read. I typed it out before the show, and I don't run through my ads. I just go for it, and that was me going for it.
Now you're gonna win the Millionaire Lottery just because of that.
Yeah, and I did run out of breath toward the end of that. Speaking of which, Andrei Kuzmenko on the fourth line tonight against the Minnesota Wild. We're trying not to date ourselves too much, but we kind of expected this with our conversation that we had yesterday.
Yeah, there was a sort of debate where some people were wondering whether he was going to get scratched for the game tonight. And I remember being on the show yesterday and saying, no, you want to manage the relationship. And I think the perfect middle ground where you want to send a message, but at the same time manage the relationship, is to shelter him at 5-on-5, play him in a fourth line role, shuttle Nils Höglander up to a top six role, and keep him on the first unit power play, so that way he's still getting his offensive touches, especially because it's not as if the Canucks have a ton of viable alternatives for PP1 if you scratch Kuzmenko. And again, I just think it strikes the perfect middle ground.
We'll get the morning skate lines in a second here, but we should mention that we do know, based on morning skate, I think courtesy of Brendan Batchelor, that Kuzmenko is going to be on the first power play unit. So noted listener of the show, Rick Tocchet, basically is doing exactly what you suggested was the right course of action yesterday. Also with that, actually, let's get these lines up here, Grady. Also with it, Nils Höglander getting the promotion as we expected, but we were going over these this morning, Harman, and you noticed something with regards to Phil DiGiuseppe that might suggest a bit of a shorter leash for Nils Höglander tonight.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'm worried about with Höglander is you've got PDG drawing back into the lineup in a fourth line role, but would it shock you if, let's say, the Canucks have a lackluster first period, the top six isn't really going, and to shake things up, Tocchet sends PDG back up to play with Miller and Besser, who Tocchet has previously liked in that spot, and then shuttles Höglander back into fourth line role. I hope that's not the case. I hope Höglander gets a legitimate opportunity, an extended look to find success there, because sometimes it takes a bit of time to build chemistry, especially with how dynamite he looked with those other two in the third period of that Devils game. But it is something that was percolating in the back of my mind was, okay, I love seeing Höglander in the top six. I'm really excited to see how he performs with that shot. But how long is that leash ultimately?
And that's another thing. The last time Phil DiGiuseppe played was November 22nd at Colorado. Did not play a lot in that game. And we were looking at, I misspoke. The last time was the 30th against the Vegas Golden Knights. Didn't see a lot of ice time. His ice time, we saw it through the month of November just kind of drastically decrease until he was working his way out of the lineup. And when Tocchet originally spoke about PDG going into the press box, we talked about how the things he was doing so well was getting in on the forecheck. And obviously that's something that Tocchet doesn't like about Kuzmenko as well. But you have to assume that for a guy like PDG, who has had to fight for everything he's ever been given at the NHL level, is going to come in tonight with, fire under his rear tonight. You have to think that. So further to the point of Nils Höglander having a shorter leash, you also have to think that Phil DiGiuseppe is going to be working his tail off to try to show he deserves a spot in that place where Nils Höglander now finds himself.
And the reason Höglander's had success in the third period, and the key to him sticking in that top line role, if you want to call it, with Miller and Besser, is exactly what PDG was bringing to the table, which is ferocious forechecking. And if anything, there are times when Höglander, he may not have the, like, watching DiGiuseppe on the forechecks, he's intelligent in terms of his angles, his stick work, his routes. He's really surgical about it. He's really technical about it. But Höglander has a speed advantage where he can just come flying in like a wrecking ball and cause destruction, has that tenacity. I like to call him an Energizer Bunny. And really that's going to be the determinant of whether that line is successful, whether that line spends a lot of time in the offensive zone. And it's also going to be a fascinating sort of mental test for Höglander in the sense that sometimes when you're finding success in a fourth line role, it isn't as daunting because you know your role isn't necessarily to produce offense. You don't have the pressure and the expectation to do that. It's more just be reliable, create energy, play with speed, and as a byproduct, you sometimes end up creating a lot of offense, as Höglander has done. But sometimes when young players then get shuttled up into a top six role, they feel the pressure of, okay, now I'm playing with Miller and Besser. These guys have been producing. And sometimes they can stray away from their game a little bit because there's the expectation of, oh, now I got to create points. I got to help drive offense. And I think I'm sure the coaching staff, a big part of their message to Höglander is going to be, yes, you're being elevated up the lineup, but don't change anything about your game. Don't put any of that pressure on yourself. Keep playing exactly how you have been, because that's going to be how you're going to excel in this role.
Especially when you got to see him in that role, excelling in that role toward the end of the last game that they played against the New Jersey Devils. When he was there in third period, he looked like a dog on a bone on the forecheck, and that's exactly what you want to see from him. Okay, Andrei Kuzmenko, fourth line tonight. We've talked about it a bit. I found it interesting. Rick Tocchet post-game against New Jersey didn't want to talk about Andrei Kuzmenko, said he was tired of answering questions about him and that he's got a forecheck. How about we start with that? He expanded on that a little bit more after today's morning skate. And we've got the clip here, Grady. I won't say what we titled it, but this is Rick Tocchet talking about Andrei Kuzmenko.
Does Kuzi need to look at how he's had success, or can he look at a guy like Höglander and see how he's found his way the way you need to play?
I think both. You know, I think looking at his shifts or looking the way you practice, you know, there's too many times where it's just not Kuzi, a couple other guys, but Kuzi mainly, where he should be the first guy in the forecheck, and for whatever reason, he always ends up behind everybody. And you can't play that way. You know, the odd time you make a wrong read, I get it, because it makes the other guys in your line play slower. You know, if you're F3 and he's going behind F1, now F3 doesn't know, what do I do now? So, but if he is the guy first on the puck, F3 knows exactly where the puck's going, then he can be aggressive. So that's why, you know, when you look at a guy like Miller, when he plays with guys who play with pace, it really helps Millsy's game. But if he plays with guys that are a little slower, he's going to struggle. So that's why it's very important that Kuzi understands that if he's F1, he's got to be F1. You can't be F2 or F3. He's got to push the pace.
Push the pace. Be F1. Seems like pretty simple stuff, but it's the main thing I think you notice when you watch Andrei Kuzmenko play right now is just that, especially in comparison to some lines who are forechecking so hard, like the Bluger line, even the Swedish House Mafia line that we've seen recently. Every line on the Canucks is getting in on the forecheck, and they're getting in on it pretty hard, and you just haven't seen that from Kuzmenko. And I think I really like that Tocchet pointed out the F1 thing, because he just hasn't been, like, it's almost like he'll make a play and then he'll almost, and I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but it's almost like he's pretending like he got tied up, or he's pretending like, oh, this is, here's my excuse for not being the first guy in. And I think Tocchet's seeing that, because I noticed a few games where I'm like, okay, he gets into a minor board battle, you know, chips the puck in, and then he's met with, or the puck is chipped in, but Kuzmenko's also met with a little bit of pressure, and he's slow getting in. And it's just like, you've got to move your feet in that situation. Because not only that, like, you got to move your feet because you want to be the first one in. But if you move your feet, we've seen it with guys like Elias Pettersson. We've seen it with guys like Nils Höglander. If you're the first guy in and you're quick and you're beating your check, there's a chance they might just trip you. Like, there's a chance they might just haul you down and you might draw a penalty. So there's nothing to lose by moving your feet, and potentially everything to gain by getting in on the forecheck. And I really like that Tocchet highlighted that. And let's not forget that this is the thing that he kind of laid out as the baseline of what he needs to do is, let's forecheck. Let's start with that. This isn't all Kuzmenko needs to do to improve, but it's a start, and we need to see it starting tonight.
Well, forecheck has to be executed as a unit. You can have the best forechecker in the world, but if his line mates aren't up to speed, if they aren't up to par, it's not going to make a difference. The other team is still going to be able to break the puck out, especially when you have the Canucks and the way they want to play with how aggressively they want to pursue pucks, even having the defenseman pinch up. Sometimes everybody has to work in unison, because if the F1 or the F2 is slow, as Tocchet has mentioned about Kuzmenko, then it just creates a problem where if F2 and F3 are then too aggressive, then you open up the risk of having breakdowns somewhere on the ice. And you even see it with the other way, the reverse, where when you are successful as an F1, it isn't just you're immediately going to strip the defender of the puck. It's more that you're forcing the defenseman to make a play under pressure. And oftentimes that means sending it up the wall on the weak side, where you have some of your teammates there ready to win the battle. It's not that you have to win the battle yourself. Sometimes it's as simple as, I've got to force the defenseman to make a rushed play, to move it to the strong side where we have other bodies and other support ready to win pucks. And I'll also say this, part of it is also, I wonder if Kuzmenko will ever have the combination of straight line foot speed and competitiveness to be a successful forechecker. Simply because we know that he's an elusive skater. He's agile. He's got good edge work. We see the escapability when he's at his best. But in a straight line, he's definitely not the fastest guy. And you definitely see that when he's trying to chase the puck, where he just looks lethargic at times. He doesn't have pop, acceleration, energy. And he doesn't, he's not a particularly competitive guy away from the puck. But that's not an excuse either, because you can look at Brock Boeser, for example. Brock Boeser doesn't have the foot speed. You wouldn't look at him when he broke into the league as he's the most competitive guy away from the puck, but he's made so many strides in that area on the forecheck with how many wall battles he wins, he always being in the right spots. You see an extra level of urgency this season. And of course, you're seeing how it also translates to offensive success. So if you're Andrei Kuzmenko, yeah, you're not going to be Sam Lafferty or Nils Höglander or Ilya Mikheyev, because you just don't have that type of speed. But you should be watching tape of Brock Boeser and seeing, okay, this is Brock's pattern recognition. This is how he makes reads. This is the type of urgency he's playing with, and seeing if you can emulate some of those qualities.
Okay, a lot of good stuff in Scenes from Morning Skate today, courtesy of our pal Jeff Patterson over at Canucks Army. The Wild have been quietly surging, it feels like, since they fired Dean Evison and brought in John Hines. They are looking for their fifth straight victory under head coach John Hines this evening. What are the Canucks expecting from the Wild tonight?
Yeah, I mean, Boldy's gotten hot again, and really they needed the top of their lineup to start producing, which is massive. I don't think the penalty kill has been nearly as disastrous in the last and costly in the last few games. But still, when I'm looking at it from the Canucks' perspective, Vancouver has to win its even strength matchup with the top six lines. Like the Pettersson and Miller lines have to come out on top, because I'm looking at Kirill Kaprizov, and for much of this season, he's been playing through injury. It's sort of been like, how the last 15 games or so, Pettersson has really been struggling at even strength, and we've suspected that he's been laboring. That's exactly what Kaprizov's been going through, except it's been the entire game, entire season. And Kaprizov also doesn't have the highest end line mates. He has struggled with his puck management at times. He struggled defensively. And even though Kaprizov has 5 points in his last 3 games, and you'd think, oh, he's back, quietly, his line has only scored 1 5-on-5 goal in the last 5 games, and they've been getting outshot and outchanced. It's not just, oh, they're creating lots of quality looks and they're not burying it. They're legitimately getting outplayed, which has been a theme for the entire season. He's not the same game breaker that he is right now, which to me means that this has to be a night where you don't have a Jack Hughes to sort of necessarily worry about at 5-on-5 or Jesper Bratt. It's not as if you're going up against the Avs with McKinnon and Rantanen, and who knows, maybe this is the type of game where Kaprizov has had some points recently, so maybe his even strength game starts to turn around as well. But to this point, it hasn't been there. So I'm looking at the Canucks top 6, and I'm really hoping that they can win their 5-on-5 matchups.
Yeah. Since the coaching change, the Wild have outscored their 4 opponents 18-5. So you're going to have to contest with them as best you can. And look, like you just laid it out, I don't want to just repeat what you said, but this feels like another get right game for Elias Pettersson and his line potentially against the top 6 of the Wild. And you're going to need both lines. You're going to need both lines in the top 6 to be going. Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.